Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon from VSSD College, Kanpur. In this paper, 19th century English literature, today we are discussing John Keats as a poet. In this module, we are going to discuss John Keats as a poet and his poetry. This module has been written by Dr. Smita Nayak. Now some interesting facts about his life, his death, his development as a poet, and analysis of 3 of his poems are part of this module. Keats' childhood has got some interesting facts to discuss. One of the leading poets of second generation of the Romantic poets, along with P.B. Shelley and Lord Byron, John Keats' name is always there. His parents, Thomas Keats and Frances Jennings, he was eldest of the 4 surviving children, but he lost his parents at an early age. He was sent to John Clark's school in Enfield, close to his grandparents' house, and that alma mater played a great role in sharpening his sensibilities. Liberal outlook and progressive curriculum molded the capabilities of Keats that we can just find in his poems. After finishing his apprenticeship with surgeon, he took an admission to medical field. He became ambivalent about his medical career, though he got the license to practice as an apothecary and physician surgeon. But he never had proper interest in medicine. His love was there in the field of literature, so he pursued literature more seriously and lost interest in the field of medicine very soon. Resolved to become a poet, he wrote many poems like O Solitude, To My Brothers and Calidore as an early poem. Edward Holmes described Keats' volatile character always in extremes. He faced scathing sarcasm for his poetry. All literary works of Keats was published during last 4 years of his life. He was never appreciated much in his lifetime. Publishers were not ready to publish his work. It was hard time for him to be recognized as a great poet. It is only posthumously he was just hailed as the great romantic and a great poet. Like his 2 brothers, Keats also suffered from tuberculosis infection. That was his family disease. He inherited that. Keats was very close to Isabella Jones, whom he befriended in 1817. But in 1818 he met Fanny Brawne, and later on their love remained unconsummated as he was a struggling poet, which resulted in depression, darkness and disease. He passed away in February 1821. As a poet, his journey is not a very smooth one. One of the most admired and studied British poet today, he was not well received by contemporaries. His admirers praised him for thinking on his pulses. His style, loaded with sensuousness, more gorgeous in his effects and more voluptuously alive, attracted many, but it was not praised properly. Extremely well-read Keats coined and propounded the concept of negative capability. That became a thing to discuss in the field of literature. Always portrayed his immediate experience into poetry, drawing images and metaphors from nature, painting, sculpture and other arts made him immortal. Rightly said for him, here lies one whose name was writ in water. His poetry was thus full of seriousness, aesthetic, and humanitarian ground. The beauty, he was the lover of beauty. Who can forget Ode to a Nightingale, where he said, "My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense as though of hemlock I had drunk." It is the finest expression of Keats's genius where one finds his inner self. In the Ode to a Nightingale, which is amongst the most magnificent achievements of English word, Keats was mesmerized and he felt a different sort of tranquility in Nightingale's song. Nightingale does not actually die. She is immortal through Keats, through the song of Keats, where she is going to live forever. The poem, the Ode to a Nightingale, has 8 stanzas with 10 lines each. Stanza first and stanza second, he describes that his heart aches, and this ache is pleasurable. You see the differentiation, you see the contrast. He describes the ache, he describes the pain, but he is ready to bear that pain. He is welcoming that pain and he is finding a different sort of pleasure out of that pain. The pain he feels is not because he envies the bird, because the bird is happy and singing and he is not happy, but because he is too happy after listening to his song, because he has forgotten all his worries after listening the song, because his otherwise pain has been diminished after listening the song. The poet also remembers the river Leith. We all know the Leith is the river of forgetfulness. The once you take dip, you forget everything. It has been described by Charles Lamb as well. He feels that he has drunk from it and forgotten all the bad memories. He has forgotten all the past worries. He has forgotten all that could give him pain. And how it was possible? It became possible only after hearing the song of the nightingale. Poet longs for the vintage wine, which will have floral taste. Good wine needs to be kept cool. The poet's earnest wishes to drink hemlock, the wine, the vintage wine, and disappear with nightingale in the jungle, so that he will not have to face the materialistic problems. He will not have to face the problems of the world. So that's why he wants to drink that hemlock. He wants to fly. In stanza 3rd, 4th and 5th, he talks about his desire to fade away far into the jungle quietly, without telling anyone, without knowing anything else, and forget the hurries and burries of mundane world. Time is a villain here. As with passing time, beauty fades away. He is a lover of beauty. He loves every kind of beauty. He loves the beauty in nature as well. But time is the most important factor. Beauty fades away. Youth becomes old. He says, where but to think is to be full of sorrow. Love, like beauty, is fickle. He compares love with beauty. Beauty fades away with time, and he says love also is not the same forever. It also fades away. It also changes and not last more than couple of days. The poet wants to fly with the bird with the wings of poetry. He knows that he cannot rely on Bacchus, the Greek god of wine, or his bards or friends. Poesy's wings are viewless. He cannot just visualize them, but more powerful than confusing realm of brain. In stanza 6th, 7th and 8th of Ode to a Nightingale, from sights and smells, poet turns to sounds. And he says that he is trying to listen the darkness. Just try to understand this. He is trying to listen the darkness. What he wanted to convey? That all his senses are working now. He can just perceive with all his senses the beauties in nature. The obsession with the idea of death is striking. And it was striking to the extent that he calls it rich to die. The poet calls the bird immortal. And the song is such a divine truth, as Ruth also must have heard his song. The song of the nightingale, it fades away in the distance. And the poet, he returns to his conscious real life state. He realizes, oh, I was having a dream. And he asks, do I wake or dream? Another ode is Ode to Autumn. We know that Keats has visualized every season. He has described every season in detail in his poems. And this poem, Ode to Autumn, is a beautiful ode which describes the season in its plenty. I quote, "Season of mist and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun." Now this ode was written in September 1819, and a season whose bounty contains both fulfillment and incipient decay. The three stanzas depict the gradual rise of thought. In the first stanza, autumn is viewed as the season, doing the season's work, bring all the fruits of the earth to maturity in readiness for harvesting. So that is one important thing. Why autumn is favorable? Because you get all ripe fruits in it, and it is the job of season to make it ready. In the second stanza, autumn personified in woman's shape is presented at the various operations of the harvest and the vintage. The poet depicts the scene after the harvest, the granary where the harvested grains are kept. Now, pay more attention towards this, that autumn has been personified as a woman, a season and a woman, a beautiful expression of personification, the figure of speech. Now, this woman has hair, they are soft and they are lifted by a gentle wind. And there, in autumn also, what autumn is doing, you have got harvest, which soft hair are there and they are moving with the wind. So the comparison of autumn with a woman. Note the optimistic note and hope in the end also. All the sights and sounds produced a veritable symphony of beauty. No negativity. He enjoys the season. He feels something optimistic and expresses that. The main points of this ode are pastoral tradition of singing and merrymaking, many animal images, full-grown limbs, crickets singing, birds whistling and twittering swallows. An unconventional appreciation of the season autumn. For Keats, autumn is season of mist and mellow fruitfulness. Commenting on the popularity of Keats's odes, Bridges says, I quote, "Had Keats left us only his odes, his rank among the poets would not be lower than it is." Unquote. Another poem by Keats, The Fall of Hyperion, a Dream. It's a beautiful poem, and critics have profusely commented upon this poem. First, I quote a few lines from the poem. "Fanatics have their dreams wherewith they weave a paradise for a sect, the savage too. Poesy alone can tell her dreams. Every man who is nurtured in his mother tongue would speak." Now, what is there in this poem? This is called Keats's epic poem, and it was written in 1818 and 1819. The poet has to define the position of poetry. The poet has his dream like other men, but unlike common men, being a poet, he remembers it and saves it from obscurity. Unlike fanatics, poets are dreamers, especially romantic poets, because dreaming, imagination, that is a part of romantic poetry. So poets are dreamers, far-sighted, and they imagine and create wonderful future with their visions. That is the importance of dream. Influenced by three major previous works like Milton's Paradise Lost, Dante's Divine Comedy, and Virgil's Aeneid, he wrote this poem. The poem runs in 540 lines. Canto 1, being little longer, consists of 479 lines, and Canto 2 is little short, consists of 61 lines. There are two frames: the narrator's dream of Moneta, goddess of memory, that is the mythological reference, and her narrative of the fallen gods. He was standing where there are trees from various countries with various climes like palm tree, myrtle, oak, skymore, and beech. He felt a kind of numbness and heaviness. The voice of high prophetess says that the poet has powers to feel his death and he can go back now and live. Canto 1 ends on a melancholy note and it is deepened in Canto 2. Everywhere there is grief. Even the natural element like wind is blowing the unhappy chords. Hyperion is aching. He has a lofty, valorous, bright palace. There is gold, bronze, and he savors the poisonous brass and metal stick. Now, while analyzing this poem, we can find that it is little lengthy. The prologue is little lengthy, and Moneta's account of fall of the Titans and new order of gods is there. The poet goes beyond Miltonic or Dantean vision in describing nature of evolution. The idea of old power being replaced by new, beauty, knowledge, vision, and experience are quite similar and show the qualities to romantic ideals. The poem is concerned with pleasure and with pain both. Hyperion is a mythological figure. Because it is there in the title, you must understand the fall of the Hyperion, who the Hyperion is. He is a Titan, son of Uranus and Gaia, father of Helios, that is another name of sun, then Selene, moon, and Eos, that is dawn. The word Titan, Titan generally means very big. The word Titan has also an allusion. Titans are any of the sons of Uranus and Gaia, including Coes, Crius, Cronus, Hyperion, Lepidus, and Oceanus. Another mythological reference in this poem is Moneta. Moneta is a goddess of memory and an epithet of Juno called Juno Moneta. Moneta is also the source of the word money. Saturn is seen as the god of generation, plenty, wealth, agriculture, periodic renewal and liberation, and later development, also the god of time. His reign was the age of plenty and peace, but in the present he appears as the fallen general or defeated Titan. Before you sum up any of the poem by Keats, just remember the words of Keats that made him immortal. I am quoting just 3 quotes from his poetry. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases it will never pass into nothingness. Unquote. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. You are always new. The last of your kisses was ever the sweetest, the last smile the brightest, the last movement the gracefulest. Let me explain these. When he says a thing of beauty is a joy forever, what he means? That whenever you see a beautiful thing, a beauty in any object, in any person, the joy you receive, the joy you get is not going to be fade away, is going to remain with you forever. That gives you soothe, peace whenever you are in problem, whenever you are in pain. So beauty is appreciated as a source of everlasting pleasure. Heard melodies are sweet, but unheard are sweeter. The melodies that you could not hear, but you could feel, they are sweeter. So it's not necessary that melodies are heard with ears only. The sweetest melodies are those which are heard by your all the senses. Like he said in the previous poem that he could hear the darkness. He says the last of the kisses, last smiles, last movements are the best because you have the fresh memory. So that's why we can call, no doubt, without any problem, Keats one of the greatest romantic poets. His poems are source of pleasure for readers. He died, and his death was so painful that he was waiting for his death to come. Holding the hand of his friend in his hand, he was waiting for his death. He asked his doctor, how much time it is that you can call me posthumous? A creator, a visionary, a writer who died so early, he had such a painful death. Even then, he gave word the pleasure of his poetry. Thank you for visiting EPG Pathshala.